greatest sports debate show on the internet.
Jalen Carter does not dive for his knee.
He grabbed his knee, though, which was
a dirty play. That was a football play.
You don't get to talk anymore.
Football play.
You don't get to talk anymore, sir.
Championship rings, starring Brandon Lewis.
Philadelphia Eagles are Super Bowl champions, and welcome to Championship Rings.
And Josh Ungar.
Buddy. So, who was right about the Indiana Pacers making it to the conference finals?
Well, let's see. Jalen Brunson gets hurt, and Alex Burke gets hurt, and Mitchell Robinson gets hurt, and Josh Hart gets hurt. You have the easiest road to the Eastern Conference Finals this side of the Boston Celtics. So, were you right, or was it the NBA gods saying, let Josh Ungar be the only person in the world to pick the Indiana Pacers?
Nope, I was right from the beginning.
Begins now.
And in collaboration with Voltage Live, this is the hottest debate show on the internet. This is episode 73 of Championship Rings. As always, representing Brandon Lewis, I am Brandon. Representing Brandon's World, I should say. I am Brandon Lewis. Representing the Sports Room Talk Show and the Ungar to the Max YouTube channel, we have Josh Ungar. Josh, from the NBA to March Madness to the NFL, welcome to Spring Sports.
Yep, and all I have to say to start this thing is, it's great to be a Florida Gator. Said it's great to be a Florida Gator for the first time since 2007. The Florida Gators are the national champions.
I take it someone's happy about that. I can't wait to get into that segment about 30 minutes into this show. But something happened in the NBA on Tuesday. Yesterday.
Wait, before you get into this, think about all the bombs that have dropped during this NBA season. First, we have the Luka Doncic trade. Then we have the Memphis Grizzlies firing Taylor Jenkins. And now this happens on Tuesday. Have you ever seen an NBA news cycle, I guess, like this at all? Have you?
This is the problem with today's NBA. We care more about this stuff than we do about the on-court stuff. That would be my response to that.
Okay.
People will talk about this. People have talked about the Luka trade for 2 straight months. As long as the Denver Nuggets are in the playoffs, they will talk about the fact that they no longer have a current head coach and a current general manager. More so than they will talk about how the Denver Nuggets do on the basketball court that night. Every Nuggets game this postseason, this will be brought up more than one time. I can almost guarantee you it.
So I'm looking at the standings right now as of 6:03 on Thursday, April 10th, with just 3 games left in the regular season. And Denver right now sits in 4th place in the West. So if the season ended today, which I understand it doesn't, but if it did, they would be playing the LA Clippers in the first round, which they could maybe win that series because it's the playoffs. Kawhi could run into the corner of his kitchen countertop and oh no, I broke a toe. I'm out for all the playoffs. I do not trust Kawhi Leonard to stay healthy come playoff time. I don't. But anyway, getting to the main topic of this discussion, I know I just went off on a major rant there, though I think everything I said is valid, but nonetheless, this feels like something anti-Kroenke. As much as I hate Stan Kroenke because of the way he screwed over the city of St. Louis with the Rams, but from what I understand, the Kroenkes, whether it's with Arsenal the LA Rams, Colorado Avalanche, or the Denver Nuggets, they don't really have a tendency to fire their head coaches in the middle of or towards the end, in this case, of the season.
This would be like if the Rams clinched the NFC West, but they have like a 9-7 record going into the last week of the season. They decided to fire Sean McVay.
Yes.
I mean, that's what kind of this was like. Now, from all the reporting and everything that's been talked about and written about and tea leaves about, if you will, it sounds like Michael Malone and Calvin Booth were going behind each other's backs to the owner, and the owner just said, you know what? I don't even care if we win the championship this year. This is so toxic. This is so discordful. And we do have the best player in the world that we do have a chance to win a championship. But if we do win the championship, we got to fire these guys anyway. So we might as well just do it now.
My guess is, not to interrupt you, but to actually piggyback off what you were just saying, my guess is if Denver were to make a deep run with Michael Malone still as the head coach, it would have put them in a tough spot. Because from what I heard, they wanted to let Michael Malone go in
2 years ago when they won the championship that year. If they didn't win the championship that year, he was fired.
Yes.
And there are reports out there that, Michael Malone can be very hard on players. We see that. There's video surfacing around the interwebs of him taking shots at some of the lesser players who obviously don't watch film. And maybe some of that has to do with Russell Westbrook, who I said going into this offseason was the worst signing this team could have ever made in the history of NBA players, because this is what Russell Westbrook does. He gets your coach fired, because ever since he screwed up the game against the Timberwolves last week, outside of last night, the Denver Nuggets cannot recover, and that's one of the reasons why Michael Malone and Calvin Booth no longer have a job.
By the way, that was one of the best games I have ever seen between the Nuggets and the Timberwolves.
Well, remember last year, Game 7 broke my heart. The Western Conference semi when Naz Reid went out of nowhere and went completely nuclear, and I had to file a missing Porter report because Michael Porter completely disappeared in that game, along with the likes of Aaron Gordon and others. But
I think that's part of the reason also why Michael Malone and Calvin Booth both got fired. Not because of that Game 7 specifically. It's because what I'm more alluding to is their philosophies. I think it's, if I remember correctly, it's Calvin Booth that wants to play some of the younger guys that they've drafted.
That's what I've heard as well. But also,
whereas on the flip side, Michael Malone wants to stick with the veteran group.
Booth was the one who, after they won the championship, they basically did a Colorado Rockies thing and cut payroll. I mean, they let almost every role player that wasn't under contract outside of Porter go, and they gave Michael Porter, who had a great playoff run that year, but up until that point had an injury history that we all know of. They gave him basically a max contract, and now it's a terrible contract.
Yeah. They let Bruce Brown go, who was an integral piece for that.
They let Brown go. They let Jeff Green go. They let KCP go.
He's been a fantastic addition for the Orlando Magic.
Well, has he? I mean, the Magic stink. They stink.
That's because of injuries.
Well, it is, but they haven't been a great team all year long, and KCP's been okay for them. Not great, I would argue.
Anyway, but you got to wonder how much Nikola Jokic factored into this.
Well, not at all. He even said last night of the game, he said this was not a discussion. I forget the words he said. It was a decision, I think is what he said, not a discussion, where they told him, yeah, we're firing the GM, we're firing the coach. Because we know with these international players, Giannis has sort of done the same thing in Milwaukee. Remember, he stuck up for Coach Bud there before they let him go. These international players, for whatever reason, they're sort of taught like the coach is the king of the castle. You don't stoop down to the coach. You listen to the coach and all of these things. Listen, Jokic is, in my opinion, right now the undisputed best player in basketball. He's scoring 60 points a game and they're losing. I don't get it, but at the same time, it's like Denver. Jamal Murray is in and out with his health, but if he's healthy, he's proven to be one of the best playoff players in the NBA the past few seasons. Nobody can guard Jokic. So
yeah, but Jokic, if you go back and watch that Indiana game the other night in Denver, Jokic on the one play just left a shooter wide open in the corner. He didn't even try to guard, and the Pacers player knocked it down for three. There was another play where Miles Turner, who's shown that he's a very capable three-point shooter for a big man, he's got all this room or all the space. It's like when I described, the lack of pass rush from the Browns against Ben Roethlisberger in Cleveland, where, he could just stand back there, do his laundry.
Jokic is not the best three-point defender. We all know that. Part of that is because of his speed. Could you imagine if Jokic had any more speed? But
I'm talking about the overall team defense, though. There were plays where Miles Turner was left wide open. Shooters were left wide open for three-pointers and easy layups. And it almost felt like, and I know this was in the reports too, that the Nuggets are just, we don't care. And
and the weird thing is, like you said, it depends on who they face, and we're not going to know who they face till about 6 o'clock on Sunday night. It's too hard to predict right now because everybody in the West is within a half game of each other.
The only thing we know for sure
is Houston's the 2 seed.
Yes.
And it does look like with the Lakers being up a game, I think it's a safe bet that they're probably going to be the 3 seed, I would imagine.
Yeah,
so,
but I will still say this. Even though Houston has locked up that 2 seed, I would still say that final game of the season against Denver on Sunday is important for the Rockets because there's a situation, whatever word you want to use, where those two teams could end up playing each other in the second round.
Yeah, it depends on how Houston feels, and it depends on the scenario. I remember the Cavs last year picked the Orlando Magic basically to be their opponent. And what did I say at that time, this time last year? I said, if you pick your opponent, it's always karma. Never pick your opponent. Just go about your business. Rest your guys. If you face an opponent that's a bad matchup for you, so what? Because what happens if you go, oh, it's more than likely that we could beat this team? That team that you picked knows about it and they play extra hard. That it always happens.
Yeah, and we ended up going to a game 7 against Orlando.
Exactly. So if I had to give advice to Ime Udoka and crew, it's rest all your players and let the cards fall where they fall. Listen, if Denver plays the Clippers, I would favor Denver. Listen, you talked about the Kawhi Leonard situation. I don't trust it either. The Clippers are hot right now. I just think in a 7-game series, Denver has probably 2 out of the 3 best players on the court. As much as I like Golden State, I don't think they have a Jokic answer. I think they would almost have to just outshoot Denver because they literally cannot guard Jokic. I think Memphis they could beat because I don't think Memphis is an all-around great team, and who knows what the John Morant antics are. So I'm looking at this thing going, Denver to me, they're probably going to match up in the second round against Oklahoma City, and then it's going to be a battle of probably the 2 best players in the West in SGA and Jokic.
Yeah. I would give Oklahoma City the slight edge, though I know Denver has more playoff experience. But
that would be a really good series.
Yeah.
That's going 6 or 7. So I think we both agree, like, as much as this seems weird for Denver, and it's like, what the hell is going on? There is a world out there that the Denver Nuggets not only make the Western Conference Finals, they could get to the NBA Finals and maybe even win the championship. There's also a world where they get first rounded in 5 games.
Yeah. It all depends. The West is going to so heavily depend not just on the star players, but the matchups. Not so much in the East, but in the West, it's like who do you play and when do you play them? Because if you're somebody like the Lakers, for example, do you want to play Oklahoma? I know they're most likely going to end up in the 3 seed, but just go along with me. If you're the Lakers, would you rather play Oklahoma City in the second round or in the Western Conference Finals? Like,
I will answer that right after we get to this because last night was a scene, if you will, in Dallas. So Luka's bawling his eyes out before the game. Luka's going crazy, puts up 31 points in the first half. Dallas fans are wearing Luka Doncic Laker jerseys. They're chanting "Fire Nico." LeBron is leading a Luka chant from the bench. And all of a sudden, this Los Angeles Laker team, when that team is on and when they play good defense, which I admit to you is not every night and it's definitely matchup dependent, but when LeBron is playing at LeBron Apex, which is still top-ish, best offensive basketball player in the game right now, Luka doing his Luka thing, you get Austin Reeves going nuclear. Even if they play adequate defense, I don't care if they don't have a center. It's almost too hard to stop.
yeah. And I mean, they had a center for about, 10 minutes?
Yeah.
And then wasn't it
Yeah, he failed his physical.
Yeah. Mark
with the
Williams.
Lakers, Mark Williams. So
Yeah.
listen, last night was insane. I don't know. I give credit to Nico Harrison in this regard that he was actually in the arena last night. Because if I was Nico Harrison, I would have been at my home with security guarding my house. So I give him credit for being in the building and just taking it like a man, if you will. But to answer your previous question that we just talked about, if I'm the Lakers, I think I want Oklahoma City. If I had a choice to play Oklahoma City in the Western Conference Finals, because I don't want to see Denver. As much as Denver is going through a circus right now, I don't want to see Nikola Jokic in that team because I couldn't beat him the last couple of years. And to me, the more likelihood right now is Denver plays Oklahoma City in the second round as opposed to Denver playing the Lakers. So if I'm the Lakers, if Denver plays Oklahoma City in the semifinals, I'd rather have Oklahoma City and take my chance that they're a very young team and LeBron and Luka can outduel SGA and their crew. That's how I'd answer it.
Okay. And I understand that. Yeah, it was crazy last night. The whole arena was covered in t-shirts which I think were in Luka's native language. I don't.
Yes, It was.
And I've never seen a player get that emotional during a return.
Before the game, usually they do it, like at the stoppage of the first quarter, or, the first break or whatever have you. This was before the game, right before tip.
You know what's crazy though is like the chants, cheers, support for Luka were louder than what the home crowd gave to the Mavericks. Think about that.
I've never seen anything like it.
A visiting player got more support from the home fans than the home team. Like, when do you see that? Almost never.
Well, let me say something that I have not heard anybody in the sports media world bring up today, but I'm going to bring it up right here, right now. If this scenario happened even 10 years ago, let's say 10 years ago, or this is a great example. Let's say in 2007, Kobe Bryant, who had asked out of LA, and the Lakers obviously said, no, we're not trading you. We're going to get Pau Gasol, and we're going to go win 2 more championships. But let's say the Lakers end up trading Kobe to Chicago or wherever he would have gone at that point. If he comes back, I don't know if even he gets cheered as much in Los Angeles because there is a big difference in today's society of that, especially in the NBA, because the NBA is the league of stars, right? SGA, Jokic, LeBron, Steph, Durant, Giannis, name them. That there are a lot of fans that, because of social media and because of our short attention spans and all that, they are more fans of players than they are teams.
So I agree with you on that, but I think also part of it is Luka was drafted by the Dallas Mavericks.
Yes, he was.
And he spent his entire career until he was traded to the Lakers.
And he also did not want out, which is the biggest difference here. Is he never went and requested a trade. He never bitched publicly to the media. He was going to do a Dirk Nowitzki and stay in Dallas in 20 years. And if he won a championship, great. If he didn't, great. That's kind of how I think, even though there's a lot of speculation about if Nikola Jokic wants out. That's kind of the vibe I get about Jokic in Denver.
Yeah. Which, by the way, it'll be interesting since Carmelo is going to the Hall of Fame. Will the Nuggets retire 2 jerseys with the number 15 on it? Because
that's a good point. I didn't think of that.
That's the number Melo wore if he was with Denver. And obviously, we know what Jokic is doing. So it'll be interesting to see how the Nuggets handle that. But I think that's overall, I think that's the key difference between what Luka got last night and what Kobe might have gotten in the situation you're talking about. Because he wasn't drafted by the Lakers.
Technically he was. He was traded on draft night, but that's like saying Luka wasn't drafted by the Mavericks because he was technically drafted by the Hawks and then traded to Dallas.
Yeah, that part is true, but yeah, I do see what you're saying actually.
It's the same thing. Kobe never, he was traded on draft night. So was Luka technically.
That's a good point, actually. And it's weird with the NBA draft because unlike in the NFL where trades are just done, like the NBA trades have to be processed and then they're announced later in the night.
It's stupid. I don't understand it. But nonetheless, the biggest difference in this scenario, like you said, Luka did not want to leave LA.
And Dallas.
Dallas. The funny thing is, I heard our old friend Kevin Wilds today on First Things First. I thought said the funniest thing I ever heard of my life.
Oh, I boycotted that show, by the way.
Really?
Yes.
Over the Chris Broussard incident last year that we talked about, or something?
Yeah, I've tried giving it multiple chances, and I'm just like, nah, I can't do this.
Anyway. Mr. Wild said if he was the new Mavericks general manager, his first move would be in the interview telling the owner, hey, can we spend $1 billion to get Luka back?
The only way I think the Mavericks can make this right, call the Phoenix Suns and say, what do you want for Kevin Durant?
No, even that won't make it right. You know what will make it right? There's only one way. Win the title. And Kyrie Irving is hurt, and he's going to be out almost all of next year. And Anthony Davis, he's been healthy the last couple of years, but he's mostly been a sack of brittle bones his entire career. There is no way they will win a championship before Luka does in LA.
Yeah. Saying that reminds me of when LeBron left to go to Miami and the Cavs.
It's very similar. If LeBron got traded from Cleveland to Miami, it'd be the same situation. Which, I guess technically he did because it was a sign-and trade. But we all know, obviously, he wasn't. But people forget about that was a sign-and trade.
Yes. But what I'm saying is, I don't remember if it was the Cavs owner, Dan Gilbert.
It was. He wrote a letter.
Okay, so you know what? saying, "Will
Yeah,
win a
of course I remember. It was the night / the day after the trade where he said, LeBron will never win a title in Miami. We're going to win a title. And then the Cavs only become the worst team in the NBA for the next 4 years. But nonetheless, speaking of the Cavs, Mr. Ungar, are you still hovering over the panic button? Because this Cleveland Cavaliers team is officially the #1 seed in the Eastern Conference after laying it on the Chicago Bulls Tuesday night.
We shouldn't have lost Sunday's game against the Sacramento Kings. I can tell you that.
Well, who cares? I really don't care.
Okay, so the reason, this whole conversation came up is because me, Jalen, and Brandon have a whole group text, and
You also mentioned this last week on the show. This started last week.
I know. I guess my concern with this is a lot of our losses recently have been to teams kind of stuck in that 4 to 6 and play-in range. You've got Orlando, Sacramento twice, Phoenix, the Clippers, and there's other teams, Detroit, and I'm sure there's a couple other games I'm forgetting, but just losing to those caliber of teams, sure, I get it, they're playoff teams or play-in teams, whatever, but something about how that we were losing those games, not just who we were losing to, but how. It was the how that was more concerning to me.
Well, I think 3 things. Number 1 is for some of those games, not all, and I acknowledge that, but for some of those games, guys like Evan Mobley did not play. Mitchell was out a game or 2. Jared Allen, has played limited minutes because Jared Allen wants to play all 82 games for the first time in his career. I know they're going to work with him on that, where it's going to be, situation where he's basically going to pull a Tristan Thompson from 2016 and do the tip and take a foul and get out of the game. The other thing is, it is a 1-game sample size for each of these games, where the difference is in a playoff series, you have to beat a team 4 teams out of 7. And the other thing is, Kenny Atkinson, out of his own mouth, I think it was last week, before they even clinched the 1 seed, said, I don't care if we win another regular season game. Our focus is strictly on the playoffs and getting ready for the postseason. I think the Cavs, at times they look bored over the last couple of weeks, and then they're like, oh, okay, everybody like Josh out here saying they're concerned, so we're just going to stop the Spurs, and then we'll lose to Sacramento. People are going to say we're concerned again, and then we'll go out and we'll stop Chicago. I think this team has shown the ability that they are legit. They, from day 1 this season, never relinquished the #1 seed in the Eastern Conference. And I think that says something when the defending NBA champion, who's just as good as you, is also in that conference.
Yeah. And we're resting most of our guys tonight against the Pacers.
As they should, and they will rest tomorrow, I would imagine, against the Knicks, and I would also imagine Sunday against Indiana. I would suspect the Cavs to not win. I would be shocked, actually, if they won in a good way another game the rest of this regular season. And, we'll see. I'm still putting it out there that I don't think they will lose more than 2, so they can lose up to 2 games before they get to the Eastern Conference Finals.
If we face Indiana in the second round, the Pacers have shown that they can give us trouble. I could see that series going 6, maybe 7.
I could see it maybe going 6. And I say maybe if they have a hot night, maybe they tie it up at 2 games apiece. I don't see Atlanta giving us any issues. I think that will be a legit sweep. I don't care if they beat us twice in the regular season. Playoff basketball is different. We will throw Trae Young's little ass to the ground and make him our daddy and send the Hawks home in approximately 4 games. Josh Giddey and Kobe White have played good basketball, and Nikola Vucevic for Chicago, but they're a good team, but they don't have anybody that legitimately scares you. Or Orlando, I like their pieces, but they just can't shoot.
I think they're going to end up facing Boston in the first
and
round.
that's what it looks like to me. To me, like Miami, I don't know what to make of them. I think it really comes down to Atlanta or Chicago, who we play. To me,
yeah. I will say this. I know Orlando's not quite the same team we faced last year in the first round, but I could see the Magic pushing the Boston Celtics to a game 6 in that first round.
At most, it'll be 5. They could have a night at home. I think Boston, very similar. He's going to turn it on. I've been saying this for weeks, and I don't mean to get ahead of myself, and I try not to be this cocky, but ladies and gentlemen, the Eastern Conference Finals is already set.
And if we do not get Cavs Celtics in the Eastern Conference Finals, it's going to be a downright disgrace. It truly will be. Nobody wants to see, like, I don't know, Indiana, New York in the Eastern Conference Finals.
The Knicks have no shot. The Knicks got lucky that they're going to draw Detroit. I think they could beat Detroit. Probably 5 or 6
Detroit's going to
games.
give them a fight, though.
They'll give them maybe a game or 2. I don't see any first-round series in the East going 7. Maybe Milwaukee, Indiana, maybe. Though I don't know. The West is going to be so different than the East, which I think will benefit the East, whoever makes it out of it between the Cavs and the Celtics, because the West, they're going to be going for a war to get to the finals.
And as long as if the Cavs face the Thunder in the finals, and I don't want to get too far ahead of myself in that regard, but OKC would have home court advantage because they're going to end up with the best record in the NBA. However, if we play Houston, the Lakers, Denver, anybody else in the West, guess where a potential Game 7 would be? Rocket Arena, downtown Cleveland.
Well, I'll tell you right now, out of every team in the West, I know they're the 2 seed, but I don't think the Rockets have a chance in hell of getting to the finals. Okay. I don't think they have a chance in hell because I think in every series they go up against, whether it be Minnesota, whether it be Denver.
Minnesota would be such a fun first-round series against Houston.
Whatever series they have, that other team, in my opinion, has the best player on the court.
My God, the Minnesota-Houston series, good God, that would be awesome.
The only series I think Houston could win would be Memphis. That I'd probably lean Houston.
I would pick Houston if they were to somehow face Sacramento.
They're not facing Sacramento or Dallas. Those 2 teams have no shot at the 8th seed. They are playing to be the loser of whoever loses 7-8, in my opinion.
Yeah. And
the play-in tournament is dumb, but I think it is the stupidest, most wasteful. Oh, we're gonna try to prevent tanking. If I'm in the play-in tournament, outside of what Miami did a couple years ago, which was unbelievable and improbable run, these teams in this year's play-in tournament have absolutely no shot in the 9-10 at least. Like. That's what I'm talking. I'm not talking about 7-8. I'm talking about the 9-10 of what I call the fake playoff teams.
Yeah, Dallas is going to get Dallas, Sacramento. That's just kind of there for me. Chicago, Miami could be interesting. I'll probably watch it because I want to know who we're going to face. Yeah.
All right, shall we talk about what happened Monday night in the national championship game? Because what Houston did to Duke on Saturday night, which I was out of my mind, and we will get to, I'm still out of my mind about it. I don't believe it. To Florida doing literally the exact same thing to Houston down the stretch and winning the national championship because Clayton was the best player on that court Monday night when it mattered the most.
Yeah, but if it wasn't for Richard in the first half, Florida's not in that game.
Well, that was a defensive game. It was right in the hands of Houston. Like, what was it, 25-20 at one point near the end of halftime?
Yeah.
And then Houston goes on that run. They go up 12, and then they just flat out folded.
Yeah. Walter Clayton did not have a great game in the first half.
Wow.
But he turned it on.
He scored 0.
Yeah. The leading scorer actually for the Gators in that game was Will Richard with 18. So he was the one who really kept them in it. And man, just look at what Florida did throughout their run. They had to come back against the 2-time defending champion UConn Huskies in the second round. They came back against Texas Tech. They had to come back against the number 1 overall seed and fellow SEC mate Auburn in the final.
That was a flat-out choke job, in my opinion, by Auburn.
And they had to come back against Houston in the national championship.
And what's crazy is, even though we had a Final Four of all number 1 seeds, going into the tournament, I personally thought the 1 seed that was the least likely to get to the Final Four was Florida.
And yet, here they are, sitting atop college football's highest summit.
College basketball. But you know what's funny?
I mean,
for everybody like yourself, Josh, that said, "Oh, this tournament's boring. We didn't get
I was wrong.
Cinderellas." Yeah, how about that Final Four? Those were maybe 2 of the best college basketball games in like the last half decade.
And I think you're going to start seeing more of this. Maybe not necessarily like all of these close games and all that, but I think you're going to start seeing a lot less Cinderella runs from your Akrons or your St. Peters or your Oaklands, because you're going to start seeing these guys at mid-majors go into the transfer portal and end up at schools like Florida, Tennessee, Duke, North Carolina, Kansas, like these powerhouse, the premier.
Yeah, it's going to turn into what college football basically is now, which I to be honest with you, I don't mind it. I think that the more talent we have in this tournament, the better watch it is. I got to give Florida a lot of credit because, like I said, at times in every game, like you said, Josh, they looked like that they were going to fall behind, and they just kept battling. And Walter Clayton, even though he didn't have a good game in the first half in the national championship game, when it mattered the most, and especially in the second half against Auburn, I mean, he flat out beat Auburn by himself in the second half practically. Just what an amazing player on that stage. I believe he had like the best Final Four game by any college basketball player in years, maybe ever, in terms of points scored, 34 points. Absolutely incredible.
We'll get to Cooper Flagg in a minute.
Oh my God. Oh, I that brought back memories for me of the Denver Nuggets last year at halftime of 20 against the T-Wolves. And remember when I came out here on Tuesday and said, this is how the game went for me. I got it. I got this. Maybe I don't got it. Oh, I really don't got this.
But
no, that's exactly what happened on Saturday night, because that was the worst loss for a team that I was indirectly rooting for without a rooting interest in my life.
So the reason I brought up Cooper Flagg, he's undoubtedly going to be the number 1 pick, but I think based on his performance throughout this tournament and in the Final Four, and of course in the national championship, Walter Clayton said, hey, I need to be not just a top 5 pick, top 3. I'll take it even a step further. He should be the number 2 pick in the draft.
Boy, I don't know about that. I think he's going to be a very good NBA player. I don't know about transcendent NBA player the way Cooper Flagg is. But let me talk about Cooper Flagg, because I don't care if he was 18 years old. I don't care. This Duke team melted down when it mattered the most. And I know Houston played good defense, and I give them credit for it, but good defense does not stop you from not making a field goal the last 10 minutes of a basketball game. That was a total and utter choke job. Duke was up 14 points with 8 minutes to go. They were up 9 points with 2 minutes to go. They were up 6 points in college basketball with 30 seconds to go in the game. And they lost the game. This loss is on John Shire. It's on Cooper Flagg. It's on all the players. It's on all the coaches. But even with that, Josh, the score was 67-66. About 20 seconds left. Houston had just taken the lead. Duke had a chance to win the game and to still keep my bet of Duke winning the national championship alive. And Cooper Flagg got the ball. He went into the lane. He did a turnaround jump shot, and he barely grazed the rim. I don't care if the man is 18 years old and still should be a freaking senior in high school, for God's sakes. What we learned on Saturday night was, at least at this point in his young career, Cooper Flagg, as great as you are and as great as you probably will be in the NBA, does not yet have the clutch gene, because that was the shot to win the game, and Cooper Flagg flat out choked.
So, based on what you're saying, I think your answer to the question on the screen is yes, he should return to Duke.
I am going to answer this the smart way, because what Cooper Flagg should do in this world of NIL and transfer portal and all of the mess that we know in college sports, he should use his leverage with both Duke and the terrible ass teams that are going to be drafting in the NBA draft lottery and say, fellas, I'm not making my decision until I find out who gets the number one pick. Drive up that price. Make Duke pay you even more money to potentially go back to Duke, or see what NBA team would be willing to, if you're in a situation where you don't want to go to this franchise, see what an NBA team would be willing to give up to get the number one pick. Because if I am Cooper Flagg, if Miami gets the number one pick, I'm going to the NBA. If Chicago gets the number one pick and they don't make the playoffs, I'm going to the NBA. If Philadelphia or San Antonio get the number one pick, I'm going to the NBA. But if the Charlotte Hornets, the Washington Wizards, the Sacramento Kings, if these terrible franchises that have been terrible for years and barely even know basketball exists take the number one pick, there is no way in hell I am going to one of those franchises, and I will return to Duke for a sophomore season.
I will say, if he goes to the Utah Jazz, that would be interesting with him.
Oh, no, I disagree. That's another place I'm not going. I'm not going to Utah.
That would be an interesting pairing with him and Lauri Markkanen.
Yeah, he would be the only guy there with unattractive free agents. Martin's a nice player. There's no chance in the Western Conference that team has a chance to win a championship. The only team in the West that excites me for him is San Antonio. Because I get Wemby. I get De'Aaron Fox. Hopefully they get a new coach sometime and the old man don't ruin them down there in San Antonio and Greg Popovich, who just need to stay away from that team forever at this point. That's the only team in the West that I'm excited about for him going, because the West, as we just talked about when it comes to the playoffs, it's a freaking gauntlet. I mean, imagine him in the same conference with SGA, Jokic, LeBron, Luka, Kawhi, Ja, Houston's guys, Ben Thompson, Jalen Green, Sengun. We're in the East. It's like, I got to go through Josh Ungar's guy, Jason Tatum. I got to go through Donovan Mitchell. And Giannis don't really scare me because the Bucks stink. I think Cooper Flagg could get into the playoffs, maybe even the second round, if the cards fall right in the East in his rookie season. Or in
Yeah.
the West, he might win 18 games.
Yeah, true. It's more than likely it's going to be somebody like Washington or Charlotte or a Utah that ends up with the number one pick because those teams were terrible.
I think Chicago, like I said, if I was them, I would do everything in my power to lose the play-in tournament games. I would not waste my time, and I would try to get lucky with a ping pong ball. And
yeah, Chicago. Because if Chicago gets in the playoffs, we would smoke them. That wouldn't even be.
I think Cooper Flagg, now you can make an argument, he'd be in the shadow of Michael Jordan. Jordan hasn't played there in over 20 years. The Bulls have stunk for the past decade ever since Derrick Rose got hurt.
Derrick, okay, I got it. You brought him up, so I'm going to go off on this. Derrick Rose has got to be one of, if not the biggest what-ifs in the NBA. Because when they drafted him number 1 overall, you saw the instant impact Derrick Rose had with the Chicago Bulls.
Until LeBron made him his daddy. Until LeBron made him his daddy when he was with Miami.
Yes, but you saw what Derrick Rose was doing with the Bulls. He won Rookie of the Year. He won MVP.
Until they got smoked by Miami.
Yes.
Again, I will reiterate.
Yes, that part is true. But, a lot of people were saying that he was the most athletic point guard the NBA had ever seen until he got injured.
But does athletic win championships? Derrick Rose, John Morant, Russell Westbrook. Does that win you a championship? I would argue no.
Okay. And I think that's part of the reason why Durant left Oklahoma City.
That is the exact reason why Durant left Oklahoma City.
But it's just, I have to say, that's one of the biggest what-ifs. The other big what-if, when it comes to specifically the Eastern Conference, what if Joel Embiid would have stayed healthy and never gotten injured?
That's the bigger what-if to me.
Really?
Because I thought Philly had a legit case for years to call themselves at least the second best team in the East, if not the best. And the even more what-if is, what if Ben Simmons would have actually learned how to shoot?
Yeah.
That Philly team with Embiid and Simmons, I don't care what anybody says, the 2019 team with Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid, Jimmy Butler, and Tobias Harris, if Kawhi Leonard does not go ring-ding around the rosy, JJ Redick as well. If Kawhi Leonard does not make maybe the greatest clutch shot in the history of the NBA, I predict the Philadelphia 76ers that year would have won the title. I will say it forever. I thought that team was destined and that was their best shot. And after that, everything has gone downhill. And I think Cooper Flagg would have a chance to right that Philadelphia wrong. Because if you get Cooper Flagg, you can move off, in my opinion, Paul George. You can move off Embiid. You can move forward with him and Maxey and whatever you would give for those two other players and start your rebuild back to the top. And as we mentioned, outside of Cleveland and Boston, the Knicks don't scare you. Milwaukee, in my opinion, is on the downhill. As good as Indiana is, you like Tyrese Halliburton more than I do, but I don't think he's in this all-world top 5 player in the league. So I think that Cooper Flagg in Philadelphia could be really interesting like that.
I agree with you. He would definitely have the easiest path if he were to go to the Eastern Conference, but not if he goes to the Hornets or the Wizards. Hell no.
The crazy one would be, and again, I said they have no chance. If they somehow make the playoffs, I'll fall on the floor. What if he ended up in Dallas?
Oh, God. Oh, Lord.
Would that, if he turns out, again, hypothetical. If he wins you a championship, I think you would say, okay, the Luka trade was worth it.
God, I don't even know what to say to that.
Him and AD, by the way, could compete in the West. I didn't think about that, but you know what? That in the West, that works.
So, how about this one? It's unlikely to happen because they have Ant, but what if somehow Minnesota misses the playoffs?
Well, aren't they locked in? Well, I guess they could lose both the 7, 8, and 9, 10 and miss it, I guess, theoretically, right?
Yeah, because they have a huge game tonight against the Memphis Grizzlies after blowing a 24-point lead against the Milwaukee Bucks.
To answer your question, it's very unlikely. I would love to see it happen. I still don't know if that team is for the next few years a perennial championship contender because I think they're very Ant dependent, but Cooper Flagg would be a big difference maker.
As of right now, Minnesota is 8th in the West.
So they would play Oklahoma City, which I would take Oklahoma City in that series, probably in 5 or 6, to be honest with you. Yeah, the West is going to be interesting. All right, let's move on from the hardwood to the football gridiron because Shedeur Sanders, all of a sudden, and I know you have him still locked in as going to number 2 to Cleveland, but he is rapidly, reportedly, dropping down draft boards, and for everything that I've heard and read and listened to, it sounds like, in my opinion at least, and again, it could be all smokescreen, but that your Cleveland Browns have absolutely no interest in Shedeur Sanders.
Okay.
And from everything that I have read, heard, and seen, it sounds like the Giants have moved on from the idea of taking Shedeur Sanders. It sounds like to me at this point, he's either going number 9 to the Saints, or he's going to fall right in the lap of the Pittsburgh Steelers at number 21.
Which, we'll see if that happens. There might be teams that try to trade back in.
Cleveland could be one of those. I'm not denying that, but it sounds like for sure at 2 to me, he's off the board. That's from everything I've heard.
So when you said I have him locked in at number 2, you're referencing our mock draft that we're working on for Voltage Live. And the reason I had the Browns taking him at number 2 is because of their history. Who did they take number 22 overall back in 2014? Oh, I don't know. The Heisman Trophy winner out of Texas A&M, Johnny Football. Who did they take number 1 overall out of Oklahoma, the Heisman Trophy winner, Baker Mayfield? So because of that history, I was like, okay, the Browns would have the same ownership that drafted Baker, that drafted Johnny. It feels like that's a Browns type of pick, if you get what I mean.
Well, by the way, you mentioned that the last 2 picks they made there were both Heisman Trophy winners. The other guy this year would be a Heisman Trophy winner in Travis Hunter.
Yes, but what I'm specifically trying to get at more so there is not that they're Heisman Trophy winners, but Baker Mayfield and Johnny Manziel were these high-profile quarterbacks for their own reasons, different from Shedeur Sanders. I get it, but they were high-profile. Like people knew about them off the football field. Do you kind of get
much Baker? I would argue.
Okay, but do you kind of get where I'm going with that overall?
For sure. I think Baker was more known for the police video that went out right before the draft than him being a popular college football player.
Okay. I would say Baker was more so his on-field antics. I
think Travis Hunter is personally more known right now than Shedeur Sanders. That's just me.
But my point, though, is because Shedeur is Deion's boy and all that, feels like a Browns pick because of their history by drafting Baker and Johnny Manziel. Again, maybe that's just me making up a connection in my head that's not really there.
I was with you until the week started coming out. And again, they could be smokescreen. It could be a perfect decoy play by the Browns to make sure the Giants think that they have no chance of going to get Shador. But the fact that they, met with Travis Hunter, they met with Abdul Carter, they met with Jalen Milroe, they met with Jackson Dart. I think it tells you they're not going Shador at least at 2.
Yeah. It would be interesting if Shador were to go to New Orleans. I think that would be, honestly, that might be the best fit for him. Because think about that division. Atlanta is a dome team. New Orleans is a dome team. You generally get good weather in Carolina. You generally get good weather in Tampa Bay. I think.
So here's the thing, and I get the logic behind it. And Kellen Moore is just now there as the new head coach. He's an offensive mind, obviously the offensive coordinator of my 2024 Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles team. But the Saints are in such salary cap hell. They're such a disaster. They need a complete rebuild everywhere, including the quarterback position, and they just re-upped Derek Carr. That, I don't know. It's like, to me, Alvin Kamara is a very old, aging running back. Chris Olave is a decent receiver who I like. And Raheem Shaheed's a decent deep threat. But besides that, what else do you have to work with? I mean, I don't think New Orleans, from a football perspective, outside of their division, in terms of their roster, is not very good at all, if you ask me.
Oh, yeah, their roster's horrible.
That's my point. Is I don't think Shador solves their issues, because Shador was running for his life in college. What do you think he's going to do in New Orleans behind that offensive line?
Yeah. I don't know if Pittsburgh's offensive line is much better, though.
They're not, but and I have no idea what the hell they're doing, because I thought last night Aaron Rodgers was going to show up in Pittsburgh for Pat McAfee's big night out and announce that he was going to become a Pittsburgh Steeler. That did not happen. So now I think Aaron's just sitting and waiting to see what these teams do in the draft, probably in a dark room smoking ayahuasca.
I think he's still hoping the Vikings come back to him.
And I doubt they will. And they should not. They have a quarterback on a rookie contract. Unless they know something about J.J. McCarthy's knee. I'm not even talking about the fact that they see him in practice and maybe they don't like what they see out of him from a football standpoint. If they see something in his knee where it's like he's not medically cleared or he's not as healthy as we think, then you pivot. But I doubt that they come crawling back to Aaron Rodgers.
So I think Shador would work in Pittsburgh? It would be interesting. I don't know, though. How would he gel with Mike Tomlin?
Oh, I think those two would get along great.
I have some questions about that. I'm not sure.
What are you not sure about? Because I think Tomlin sees Shador as a tough-minded leader, definitely respects his football background, his football pedigree. I think Shador, Mike Tomlin coaches very much the way Deion Sanders coaches. I think Shador will get used to tough coaching, and I think that's what he embraces.
I look at how Mike Tomlin coaches his teams, and
very tough-minded defense, which is what Shador was used to in Colorado.
Yeah, but Tomlin seems to take that to another level. I'm not quite sure, and I get what you're saying about Shador, but with those personalities around him, DK, George Pickens, not quite sure. I'm like this about him with Pittsburgh.
I still think his best fit is Las Vegas, but it sounds like they're going after Ashton Gentry.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be interesting if they get Ashton Genty to go alongside Gino and Brock Bowers.
They probably think they can compete in that division. As odd and as weird as it sounds.
Yeah, because maybe the Chiefs have taken a step back, but the Chargers, I don't think are going there.
I ain't saying that until I actually see it on the field. I'm sorry. I think Kansas City's going to still be Kansas City. Who I don't know how they have the third best odds to win the conference this year right now. They are behind Baltimore and they are behind Buffalo. I'm sorry. Until somebody tells me the Kansas City Chiefs are not in the Super Bowl, I don't believe you.
I mean, they did just get smashed by your Eagles.
They did, but you know what? Can Buffalo beat them? No. Can Baltimore beat them? No. Until you beat them, show me you can beat them. I mean, Buffalo's faced them, 4 straight years in the playoffs?
Yeah. I don't know where Shador is going. There's a chance. There's possibly a chance if New Orleans doesn't take him and Pittsburgh doesn't take him. I think there's a chance Shador falls out of the first round.
I will say this. If he's there at 21, there's no way Pittsburgh does not take him.
Yeah. Actually, now that you say it, they lost Russell Wilson to the Giants. They lost Justin Fields to the Jets. They're in quarterback hell.
Their only quarterback currently on their roster is Mason Rudolph.
Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer.
So unless they have a handwritten agreement somewhere by Aaron Rodgers and they don't take a quarterback, which I think even if they still have Aaron and they know they're going to get Aaron, they still would take Shador and let him sit behind Aaron.
You really want Shador to learn from Aaron Rodgers?
Jordan Love learned from Aaron Rodgers, and you love Jordan Love.
That part is true. This is true. I just don't know if I want Aaron Rodgers' antics rubbing off on Shador.
Well, how about this? It was reported actually today by Ken Carman over at 92.3 that the Browns not only worked out Jalen Milroe, but Ken said that his source told him Kevin Stefanski's involved. Now, again, could be all smoke screen. We don't know. But the Browns' new offensive coordinator is Tommy Rees, who was Jalen Milroe's offensive coordinator during Jalen Milroe's best year at Alabama. I think there is a world where the Browns, I don't even know if they would have to move up. I think they could stay at 33, which is essentially like a first-round pick, though you only get a 4-year deal. Maybe if you want the 5th-year option and pay them a little more money, maybe you trade up one spot with my Philadelphia Eagles at 32, and Jalen Milroe sits behind a Kirk Cousins, who they would bring in after the draft, and that's your Browns quarterback room of the future.
My only thing is, you said Tommy Rees was his offensive coordinator during his best years at Alabama, but would Kevin Stefanski be willing to give up play calling?
Well, no, it's not that, but Rees will work with Milroe. Most of the OCs that don't call plays, I don't think people have understood this. I think I've said this a couple of times on the show. Even if you're an OC that doesn't call plays, you are still involved in the game plan and you are running the drills and the coaching during the week.
Yeah, but like if Milroe had that strong of a connection with Tommy Rees, I'd rather him be the one calling the plays because Milroe would be comfortable with them. They would know like right away what type of plays Milroe likes and what he doesn't like, what his strengths are. This has been part of my problem with the Browns for years. Sorry, I'm about to launch on a rant.
I know. Here you go.
Is whether they draft a quarterback, whether they trade for a quarterback, sign a quarterback through free agency, instead of looking at what the quarterback's strengths and weaknesses are and what they did, what game plan worked in college, they just say, here's our offense, we're sticking you in it. And it's like, that doesn't work. I know it didn't ultimately pan out between Marcus Mariota and the Tennessee Titans, but it's the example I keep coming back to. Because from what I saw, the Titans looked at what Marcus Mariota did well while he was with the Oregon Ducks, and they tried to construct an offense that fit his skill set. And while he was there, I liked what I saw from him with the Titans for the most part.
Well, I disagree because he never even got him to the AFC Championship game. I mean,
but there's other countless examples.
They won what, one playoff game during his tenure? I mean, Marcus Mariota, for the most part, is seen as a bust.
Okay, so maybe Marcus Mariota isn't the greatest example, but it's the one I always come back to for some reason.
Well, let me tell you this. I don't know if I've told you this on the air or not, but I see Jalen Milroe. Maybe it's his hair. Maybe it's the fact he went to Alabama. I don't know.
Jalen Hurts.
I literally see Jalen Hurts. I think that in the right, but I see a little Lamar Jackson in him too, by the way. I think he is more Jalen Hurts from the pocket and maybe a little more Lamar with his elusiveness outside the pocket. I think that in the right situation, and if he sits for a year and he gets behind a good offensive line, which who knows, the Browns may be able to rebuild their offensive line this year in the draft. I think Jalen Milroe can be a very good NFL quarterback. I'm one of those people that are more higher on Milroe than others. I don't know if the Browns are the right situation for him. I do know this. It'd be very interesting, and it would be very against what Kevin Stefanski has typically ran in his offense, which has been a bootleg, drop-back passer. But maybe it's what he was looking for in Watson, was more of a mobile quarterback. Maybe that's why they went after Watson. Obviously, it didn't work out. I can tell you this. I don't think Milroe can start right away. And I think he has to sit for at least half the year, if not a full year.
Yeah. If the Browns do that, I don't know if they would trade for Kirk Cousins necessarily. And
they would. If they draft Milroe, they're definitely getting Kirk Cousins.
And put it's weird. I don't know if Kirk would want to be put in another Falcons type situation, for lack of a better term.
Well, I think you tell Kirk, as long as you play well, you be the starter. It would be like the Atlanta situation where if he gets benched, it would be his fault.
Which, by the way, the Falcons, excuse the pun, but they took flight once Penix became the quarterback.
Well, absolutely, because Kirk Cousins was not good at the end of last year. How many times have I said it? Kirk Cousins is not the answer. The Browns should not sign Kirk Cousins, but I'm saying they are going to sign Kirk Cousins.
Okay. You're saying they should do it out of necessity, not because they want to.
Well, I don't think they should. I was saying I thought your game plan should have been you roll with Jameis Winston and you tank and you don't draft a quarterback this year, because I'm not in love with any of these guys. But the Browns are so desperate, they're going to take a quarterback. And so if you're going to do that, Kenny Pickett's not your answer. And you got to sell tickets. So in order to sell tickets, you got to at least get some name in there. And Aaron Rodgers wouldn't come to Cleveland, and Kirk's the only guy left.
Yeah, that is true. I don't know what to make of the Browns. I really don't. They got to go against the AFC East this year. The NFC North, they host San Francisco. They'll be at the Raiders. And they host Tennessee. I don't know. Maybe 5-12 for them. Something like that.
Sounds like it's going to be a long year for the Ungar to the Max YouTube channel and the video collaborations over there.
Trust me, I'm already preparing for it. And yet the Browns are like, yes, We want to build a new stadium. Yay! Ugh.
Folks, next week will be one of our biggest shows in the history of championship rings because me and Josh are not only going to bring on our man, the myth, the legend, Jalen Sandvik, to preview and give our total predictions for the NBA playoffs, but it will be WrestleMania week. So we got to bring on the guy who loves professional wrestling on this show, a.k.a. Chris, a.k.a. C-Boss Gaming, will be here to preview in its entirety WrestleMania 41. You won't want to miss that. And then in 2 weeks, we will not only be recapping WrestleMania 41, but Josh, it will be NFL Draft Week, where we will, I would imagine again, run through a mock top 10 picks of the 2025 NFL Draft.
I wouldn't be surprised. And I'll tell you this, in the mock draft that we're doing, I did not want to make the pick for the Dallas Cowboys. I tried so hard to trade it, but neither Brandon nor our man Fitz wanted the Cowboys, so I made a pick.
That'll be out, by the way. Let's see, on 4/22, April 22nd, so 12 days away. Can't wait for you guys to see that on the Voltage Live site. Of course, we are in collaboration with the one, the only Voltage Live. Next Tuesday is going to be one of the biggest shows we've ever done. I can't wait for it. Let's go. Have a great week, guys. We'll see you next time. And peace.
See ya.